You're listening to the appetizer-sized version of this episode with Frank and Chris. To get access to the full entree-sized version, go to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and become a member of the
Awesome Nerdpreneur Board.
Now enjoy the episode. What do you think is your team's secret sauce?
The real secret sauce is a stupid 8.5 by 11 laminated sign that says, "Can I tell you about our comic book?"
Nerdpreneur, you know I love my work. Life's a game, so I'ma take my turn. Nerds deserve to put their passion first. Let them rap a verse so they can all be heard.
Yeah, my nerdy passion basically is drawing.
Correct. I'm a breeder of tarantulas, importing tarantulas and some other critters.
I am a harpist. I do mainly Celtic harp, video game songs, songs from nerdy TV shows.
Obviously, I'm big on Star Trek.
It is creature design, fantastical biological creations out of watercolor.
We are dice retailers.
Nerdpreneur, you know I love my work. Life's a game, so I'ma take my turn. Nerds deserve to put their passion first, so let them rap a verse so they can all be heard.
Welcome to Nerdpreneur, where we have fun conversations with people making money with their nerdy passion. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Frank.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest. His name is Marc, and he is from Unshaven Comics. Marc, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you on here. So, Marc, what is your nerdy passion?
Independent comic book publishing.
All right.
Okay, so you make your own comic books. Is that kind of that?
Yes. I am an artist, author, and the business guy out of the three of us.
So there's three of you in this partnership, this Unshaven Comics.
Yes. Depending on how we sit at cons, we are either a Venn diagram or an addition problem. So there is one dedicated writer, one dedicated artist, and then I do both, and then also do kind of the marketing businessy stuff. And then the other two guys, like, we're all equal partners. We're best friends, have been for 30 years. So they just know that I'm a control freak and I wouldn't allow them to make any decisions
On their own, at least.
That's why they're not here.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think we got the right of the trifecta there, the right side of the Triforce to talk to you about the business stuff. So you're saying this comic book business, it's possible as an aspiring nerdpreneur to actually do it and have it be successful, because I've heard that building and creating your own comic book is pretty hard to do and find it be successful. So you're saying, yes, there's a way to do it.
Absolutely, there is.
Awesome. Do you think it's transferable to other people? Is this something we can dig into with you and find out if people can actually learn this and it's a skill?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And it's we are among many. And I think back of the 15 years that we've been doing this, I would say solid 80% of them are still doing it with us at the same time that we started, or in some form or fashion. So absolutely.
Wow. I wanted to ask, because I think some people might think this, but like, how important is being a good artist versus being a good business person, like versus being like a writer, like there's got to be all these different hats to making a successful comic. If you were to break it down into like, well, it's about 50-50 between the artistic side and then the business side, or is it more like I can make a crappy comic, but if I market it great, it'll go really well? What do you think?
Well, without shooting myself in the foot, right? I can put it this way. If your goal is to make money, and whether that means that you are sustaining an actual career or if it's like a side hustle, whatever, your financial goals are, better quality is fantastic. But I have seen people whose style far outweighed the product. I've definitely purchased my fair share of independent books where I've gotten home, read them, and really wished I could have got my money back. But then you have to respect the hustle of how they actually sold me, because I'm pretty tough to purchase on stuff. And several times that I've made those, it's been based on a promise that did not hit the page. And, conversely, I've also purchased books or know of people whose talent probably outweigh their business acumen 100-fold. And for those people, like, you kind of wish that you could do something for them, or, you know, you'd love to see them take off. But I genuinely feel like eventually that catches up to them positively. It really just depends. I've never seen someone like talent themselves out of working in comics, but that's to say it's a pretty narrow pie to begin with.
Yeah, we often see people, you know, nerdpreneurs that are struggling to get the word out there. And that's one of the core aspects and principles of what we're doing this for, of course. So let's rewind a little bit, though, and talk about how Unshaven Comics got started with you and your two friends.
Sure. First of all, like I said, we've been friends for 30 years. So I met Matt in 6th grade. We're from a small south suburb here in Chicago. And the way our school system had worked is every kid, depending on where you lived, went to a specific elementary school, K through 5. And then 6th grade, we all meet at the junior high school. And then we meet with the other junior high at the neighboring town for the high school. Well, 6th grade starts, and I'm in my new homeroom, and I notice that I don't know any kids in the class, really. Like, a couple of them were in my elementary school, but most of them were not. And one of those kids was this guy, Matt. And I walked past him on the first day, and the teacher had kind of like a introduce yourself questionnaire. And I noticed that he had flipped his over to the back, and he was drawing this absolutely sick Viking that had like a one-handed axe with blood. And I fancied myself an artist. And I looked at that, I'm like, oh, he is a much better artist than me. I think I need to be his friend. So it turns out he wasn't even a Willow kid from the other side of town. He was actually from a whole different part of he was in Chicago. I was in the suburbs. His mom moved down here, and he was a new kid. So he needed friends quick. And I jumped at that chance. I was like, well, hi, I am your new best friend. And then literally 2 weeks later, he's like, this is Kyle. I met Kyle in health class. He is also our best friend. And we're like, oh, okay. And their love of comics kind of hit my tepid love of the space. Like, I knew the cartoons. I just never had any inclination to go to a shop or buy a book. But now I did, because, hey, your friends, you know, you do what they do. Their hobbies become your hobbies, and vice versa. So we were kind of known as comic book guys all the way through high school.
I'm curious on that question. What was the first comic book you actually went out and purchased? Because it sounds like you were introduced to it through friends. What was
Yes.
the first comic book that got you into it? You're like, oh, I like comics.
Okay, so twofold. The first one that I purchased, and this is tragic, is I purchased an adaptation of the X-Men cartoon. I bought a book that was basically just the cartoon readapted back into a comic, which is a type of inception that one shouldn't traverse. But then Matt, for my birthday that year, he and I both have December birthdays. So I met him basically in August. December, he drives his bike over to my house, and he gifts me Prime and The Strangers, both #1 issues for Malibu Comics. Malibu Comics would have gone out of business, I think, 3 months later. But that did not stop me from collecting an entire box worth of Malibu books. And those two I would consider to be my firsts, like real ones.
Wow. That's cool. I'm actually not even sure. I'm not a huge comic book nerd. I had original X-Men comics, but not the ones you were reading, the real ones, the other ones. Yeah. the ones that are like a little darker, a little more gritty. But that was the only comic book that I ever really read, because I found them in my basement. It was my older brothers. It was, hand-me-down comics from a different generation. But I think everyone has those early comics where you're like, oh, this is awesome. I really like this. So what grabbed you about comics? Was there anything specific that you're like, man, I love this?
I mean, I think, I love the cartoons, and then by proxy, because, like, especially with the X-Men, prior to meeting Matt and Kyle, there was a friend of mine in 4th grade, Pat, I remember, was heavy into the X-Men lore in the universe, and I would pester him because I wanted to know every character and every superpower. That's like all I cared about. So I knew all the members of X-Force and X-Factor and the first X-Men, and then the Uncanny X-Men, and I knew their powers. And then obviously with the Batman the Animated Series dropping, I fell in love with that whole universe. I know early on, without knowing the Super Friends or who they were, eventually came back around to figure out, oh, I love Green Lantern. And I actually ended up in between summers from 6th grade to 7th, I had did an overnight camp, and my bunkmate had comics, and he ended up getting kicked out of camp, and he left me all his comics. So as he was being dragged out of the bunk, he's like, okay, I gotta go. So he's like, Mark, here, take my comics. So I read like this whole run of Kyle Rayner Green Lantern books, and I was like, well, that's my guy.
Yes.
And if you know Kyle Rayner, like, he was Spider-Man for DC when they didn't have one. And I still, to this day, think he's the best Green Lantern they've ever had. And I don't like Hal Jordan. So seeing that he gets all that love.
I think Kyle made Hal popular.
Well, it's it's
that's
all
my
those
take, at least.
Dan DiDio. I mean, we know this guy, and like, he had such a love for the Silver Age that he was never not going to make Hal Jordan, Arthur Curry, and Wally West matter, or Barry Allen, I should say. And Wally West, Kyle Rayner, like, those were my guys because they were younger, they were depicted as being newer into the. I love it when superheroes do that. Like the young Ward gets that, like, gets a shot at the apple, right? One of my favorite Batman book runs was when Dick Grayson took over the mantle of Batman. It wasn't long, but he was such a different version of that character, and I would say better in some cases because he's somehow a little bit more adjusted. It was really it was super entertaining. We know he was going to keep it, but
So before we dive off into the very deep end of endless superhero comics,
we got close there. We got right up to the ledge, I gotta say.
Yeah,
I was ready to jump into that Green Lantern pool with you, man.
But before we do that, you guys started in 2006, I think. What happened in 2006 for you guys to create a comic book company together?
Thank you for steering the train back on the tracks. So really what had happened is I went to college in 2000, graduated in 2004, and Matt and Kyle followed me down to Indianapolis, and we were just living in Indy, working. We all had girlfriends. We all had adult money for the first time. So of course it was all going into comics. And this is back when Facebook was still like the Facebook. A mutual friend of ours from high school reached out to me absolutely randomly out of the blue and said, hey, Mark, my mom is a comic book publisher, or I should say my mom is a publisher, and they translate graphic novels from the United States and then they sell them in Mexico. But they want to do it going the other way this time, and they actually want to do an original book. And I knew this gal, Alexis, from art class, and she's like, my mom asked me to do it, and I tried, and I do not want to do this. I tried it. It is not for me. But I remember you and Matt, and I remember you guys are the comic book guys. So like, you guys must be making comics, right? And I did what you're supposed to do in that situation. I lied and said, we make them all the time.
Yeah, we're pros.
So she said, great. Could you guys come up to Chicago and meet with my mom and my uncle, and they'll tell you about the project. So, we put on our best sweaters, drove up, and met her mother and her uncle, who remains the scariest human being I've ever met. We met at the bar. Again, we're not old enough to drink or anything, but we should have been. Yeah. Anyway, we got to the bar, and her uncle sits down and orders as his drink water and bitters.
Oh boy, one of them.
Power move. So we sit down with them. They tell us about the project, and then the uncle just kind of leans forward. He looks us in the eye, goes, you guys have never made a comic in your life, have you? And we're like, no, sir, we have not. But we went to school for this. Like, I got my degree in general fine arts. Matt got his degree in illustration. Kyle and I each had emphasis in writing. I'm like, trust me, I think between the three of us, we can make this work. So they agreed, and we signed just a very lucrative contract. I'm glad you guys are sitting. We got $500 and one box of books to make our first comic, and it only took us 18 months.
How many pages?
54.
Okay. All color?
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Now, hilariously, I will point out the miraculous building of this book is that they told us they wanted the book to be silent. No speech balloons. They just wanted a visual story so that they could publish it and sell it in Mexico, in the United States, and no one would have to read or translate anything. So we did write the story. They did approve the script. We did render that whole book, and I'm not kidding. 2 days before it was due, Sylvia, the publisher, called me and she's like, I feel like something's missing. And I blurted out, it has no words. And she's like, great, could you just throw some in there?
Oh my God.
So we bought a case of Mountain Dew and Red Bull, and I spent all night lettering the whole thing in my basement with Matt and Kyle taking shifts, making sure I was awake. And after one round of editing, the book was done. And that got us to 2008. We got our box of books. We got our $500, and we got to our first con to attempt to sell it.
So gotta ask, I mean, there's got to be so many lessons in that. What are just a couple of them that you guys collectively say, hey, at least we learned this?
Well, first of all, we learned how to collaborate as not just friends, but as professionals. So this is where we started to figure out who had what talents and what. Now, I started off saying, I don't want to draw anything. I know graphic design. That's what I went to school for. And obviously writing. So like I can help write it. I can letter it. I can color it. I can do all the stuff around the edges. But Matt, you're going to draw it. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And Kyle and I helped, and we did the scripting, and we learned through the process, like how to make comics from scratch. So how to scan, how to professionally color things. We learned about color flatting. I actually trained Kyle to flat, which to this day he will never do again. Because somehow we found a job that we're like, this doesn't require any talent. And then Kyle turned in his first batch, and we're like, nope, that was a lie. To this day, we still give him crap because now it doesn't matter. When you do color flatting in comic books, it means like black and white artwork, and you treat it like a coloring book, and you just put flat tone on each shape so that a real colorist can kind of come in and do their thing. Well, Kyle literally took that and said, well, whatever random color I can click, I will put into the box. So we had like brown houses with blue roofs, blue houses with brown roofs. And I was stare at these things and just make fun of him incessantly for it. Like, can't you just pick a color that's appears in nature? He's like,
so you guys hadn't. Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry,
please.
I was curious that you guys. You said that this was the first time you all learned of how to really work together.
Yeah.
And you'd been friends for so long. Was this couldn't have been the first group project that you'd done together?
Oh, it definitely was. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Matt and I, obviously, like, we went to art classes together, but there was never any like collaborative piece or anything. And we were just best friends. And it's not to say, like, I think it's just in my own personal nature that I'm never not working. So even like before we had Unshaven Comics, I was still doing freelance work for friends and designing stuff. And like, we would just hang out on Friday nights and we would play Versus, the card game, and we'd watch movies or talk about what was going on in comics or whatever. This just seemed to be that weird missing piece of the puzzle. However many years of friendship we already had up until that point, like this kind of opened up that like, oh, this is right. So like when we got out of that 18 months and the book was done, after we finished that first Comic-Con, we realized two very important things. Number one, we absolutely wanted to continue to make comics, but more importantly, number two, they had to be ours. Like, we liked doing the March. That was the book, The March, Crossing Bridges in America. We enjoyed doing that book, but it didn't have any of the things that we wanted to do. Like, it was a tasteful, creative nonfiction book about an immigration march that happened in Chicago, and it was very nice. But we were all in our 20s. We had a lot of like 4-letter words and blood and violence to get out of the system. We kept joking that if they didn't want the book at the end, like when we finished it, that we were just going to recolor it and just make it like a zombie thing. Because there's nothing but crowd shots.
Right. Right.
Luckily, they liked it.
I'm curious because you've since then worked with these two individuals for 16 years to build out many comics, right? And
yes.
And your roles, it sounds like, are fairly siloed in some ways, right? Like, okay, you got an artist, you got a writer, and you do more of the business stuff, but you kind of do both. I'm curious from a creative perspective, working creatively with other people, do you all just sort of trust where's the line of like, I trust this person to do it, but I'm going to fight for certain ideas, or I'm going to like, how do you give feedback in an example or in an environment like that allows it to be healthy? Just speaking from, working in partnerships, even ours, and also other partnerships we've interviewed, there tends to be some sort of balance that needs to happen in being able to fight for what's really important for the future or the product, and then on the other side to just make sure things get done and not be like arguing with each other. So how do you guys navigate that?
Well, I would say, like, first of all, probably the first 10 or 12 years worth of friendship actually made it easier because we already know going into something that I'm not going to say something derogatory to Matt about his artwork that I know he can't take. And I would expect the same back from him. If he draws a lousy panel, I'll call him out on it the same way I expect him to do to me. And in fact, the reason why I even do interiors is because he goaded me. He made fun of me and basically said, like, you went to school the same as I did, pal. Learn to draw. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take that criticism because, he's my best friend. From our like writing perspective, like when we're coming up with ideas and things like that, it's a little bit of improv comedy. It's yes and the way we fell into that basically is by creating the silos to begin with. So we made books originally where Kyle did the whole script, and I'm not contributing to that other than to be kind of a quasi editor, just to say, like, your idea is your idea, and I'm going to help where I can, like, tighten up your script. And if Kyle fell into that role where he's like, I don't care, edit away, like, change the word, change the thing. I'm not going to be hurt by it. Just don't change where the story's going. And again, did the same for me. When we started working on the Samurnauts, where now we're doing something together, we still figured out a way to silo it. So like, I have my part of the book, Kyle has his part of the book in terms of scripting. And we, when we go to Comic Cons, we're in the car for 10, 15 hours. There's time to talk. So we get through these plot things, we hammer it out, and it's usually some of the most fun we have. Because then you get to play that improv game of like, okay, well, who are they fighting in this book? And how can we make that tie into canon? And, there's a lot of that. And I think like when we reach that idea, when all three of us are laughing, we're like, okay, there it is. And we'll collectively fight for things that we want. But I think we've all kind of realized, especially after doing it for as long as we have now, if we have an itch to scratch on our own, we're going to let that happen in its own place. Like, I'm doing Samurnauts to the max right now, and Matt and Kyle have nothing to do with it. Other than they read it when I'm done. I given them the editing copy to take a look at, and they know like where I'm going with it. But similarly, Matt's working on a book right now, La Noche de los Luchonauts. And he's doing that a little bit to troll me, by the way. I'm the guy into professional wrestling, and he's doing the Luchador Samurnauts. Kind of a dick move, but whatever. And I know like he's going to build that book by himself, and I don't get to criticize. I don't get to say, hey, I don't like this DDT. It's like, nope, that's what you're doing. I'm going to trust it because, again, like I think you said it, it's me hemming and hawing over a panel. Like my day job, I'm a marketing director by day. I know I can't do that to somebody else. I just won't. So.
Right. There is a level of trust also that I'm hearing, at least, in what you all trust that each of you is going to further the Samurnauts. Is that Samurnauts? I said that right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's like astronaut samurais, correct? That are
Correct.
also monkeys?
They are led by a single immortal kung fu monkey.
Got you. Okay, I wondered about that. I've seen the Kung Fu Monkey on a lot
Yes.
on the front of the comics. It looked very badass. So,
hey, we know where we get our money from.
Yeah, right. Well, where do you get money in as a comic book company? Like, where does that actually come from?
Well, that's a good question. Now, very specifically to Unshaven Comics, we are 99.9% convention based, and we do that for a very good reason. The independent comic book marketplace sucks. For those who are uninitiated, there is one distributor of comics globally effectively. If you are an independent comic book maker and you intend to get into the local comic book shop that is 10, 12 states away, there's one catalog, the Diamond catalog. And Diamond has a couple of rules where you can see very quickly where the problems spark. Number one, you have to pre-sell $5,000 worth of merchandise to get into the catalog. Number two, you have to be able to take 100% returns. So if I get Samurnauts by hook or crook into the Diamond catalog and somebody in Walla Walla, Washington buys a Samurnaut copy and I ship it out to them, they put it on the shelf and they forget about it. 3 months later, they go, what the heck is this thing? I don't actually want it. They're going to send it back to me. Good luck on how that's going to ship, by the way. And I got to take it back. You tell me how to make money in that and I will gladly follow it. But we never really figured that was a good way to do it. And to be fair to ourselves, like what may separate us from others in our genre is we're really good at selling at the Comic Cons. So we are able to sustain. Now, this is not a job for the three of us. And part of that is because there's three of us. We learned very early on there's no full-time jobs in comics for a group like this to just come in, and none of us had desire to splinter off or try to make it by ourselves. And that was just not in the cards. So we are all convention based up until this year. And things have kind of changed, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more, but effectively now we're into the licensing side of this, and where can Samurnauts go that we ourselves can't handle, but people are now willing to help us. So we're extremely excited about all that happening, and we're taking nothing for granted when it comes to that side of it.
You had talked a little bit. I mean, yeah, definitely. We're going to dive into the convention side of things, and maybe this does tie into that in a way. But the three of you and your vibe on your website is unique. It's refreshing in a way that I get a strong sense of your personalities. You're friendly. You're approachable. And I'm wondering if any of that ties in, and what else ties in that makes the secret sauce of Unshaven Comics when you guys are at a con and you're wheeling and dealing. What do you think is your team's secret sauce?
Well, I'll tell you, tragically, there is one secret above all else. And I may not actually have it on me. You know what? I don't. But I'll describe it. The real secret sauce is a stupid 8.5 by 11 laminated sign that says, "Can I tell you about our comic book?" This literally by happenstance, and this is not overnight. This is just one year at a con. We were across from a booth that had speakers, and they were thumping EDM music into the aisles. And our up to that point way of stopping people to talk to us was just to stop them and yell. Kyle's voice was going, and he turned to me and Matt and he goes, "Can you guys scribble on a sheet of paper? Can I tell you about my comic book?" And he just held up just a little sheet of paper that said it. And just that alone stopped people, because they see it, they read it, they laugh. And then we have worked extremely hard to perfect that elevator pitch. To the point that we run a panel on it now, how to pitch your comic. So it's the combination of something stupid to stop people, and we all acknowledge, like, you are in a row of literal legends to the left of you, other people selling crafts to the right. You've got to stop them somehow. So just holding up a word balloon sometimes is all you need to do. But being able to back that up with something of substance. And, to your point, I'm just being modest about this. I think we've always carried dad energy, no matter our age. So I think people just stop because we are, easy to talk to. We're having a good time. Clearly, people see that we're having a good time at the show, and then it really is that pitch. Because we've pitched a bunch of different projects over the course of 15 years. Samurnauts is where there was a hard pivot, when it went from, "Oh, that sounds cool," to "Shut up and take my money."
Really?
So, yes.
What is the pitch, if you wouldn't mind?
So
So
you got me with first off, can I just say I love the sign thing? That is so cool and so smart. And I think that even if anyone who is just like listening and thinking about how to get more people to show up at their con or to do that, like having some visual like that takes away so much awkwardness too between interacting with nerds who aren't always the most outgoing and excited to chat to strangers. You can have them self-select from a big group. I just wanted to point out that that is such a cool and smart way to do it, and clearly seems to work. So you got me with that. I'm walking up. What do you say to me after that?
So after, I mean, literally, Kyle will repeat it. And by the way, he is the salesman. That, like, of all the special skills we have, we all bow down to Kyle. That man is the machine. And I'll get into it in a sec. But effectively, you come by the table, you see the sign. He goes, "Hey, sir, can I tell you about my comic?" You say, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he goes, "Okay." And he picks up the book, he hands it to you, and he goes, "It's called The Samurnauts. It's about a team of samurai astronauts led by an immortal kung fu monkey defending the Earth from zombie cyborg space pirates." Now, as you can see, it is a full color print book, over 200 pages of content. Normally it is $25, but here at the show, we actually have a special. We're selling it today for $20. Would you like to give it a try?
So the eyebrow raise after samurai astronaut led by an immortal monkey. Is it always the same? Like, is it always like, "Oh, you got my attention, sir"?
It is.
You got it from both of us just now.
We know we always get into it. Samurai astronaut. I've sat here and monitored people's faces. They hear samurai astronaut, and now it's starting to churn. Led by an immortal kung fu monkey. Oh wait, now what? And now it's okay. I think you have me now. Now close it. And we say, depending on the book, of course, they fight zombie cyborg space pirates, or transforming demon dinosaurs from another dimension, or a cadre of evil mutant hive mind socialists. Whatever they happen to be. Like, we have all of these phrases. Kyle's got them all memorized. I don't. But it's that combination of samurai astronauts, immortal kung fu monkey, crazy villain descriptor that seals it, because we know that we don't have to get into the semantics. We don't have to talk about anything deeper, because they're also flipping through the book.
And you don't want to give it away.
Well, some people do, and we choose not to. But the artwork speaks for itself in this case. And from there, we do make a point to get into like what we're actually handing you. So we let you know, this is a book. This is how many pages there are. We do highlight that it's full color, even though I think that's kind of silly because everything kind of is now, but whatever. And then we tell them the price. And the most important thing that people do not do is we ask for the sale.
Yes.
We learned our lesson for many years. We used to ask, "What do you think?" Which is the worst question you can ask, because what do you think will give you an infinite number of responses from people who think this is now their time to give you an ad hoc book review,
right,
to an ecumenical debate about comic books in general, to telling us how they know that they're smarter than we are and that this is clearly just Hanuman. Gotcha. And we're like, "No, well, yes, it's inspired by, but there's been a lot of different versions of that monkey, and ours is not that." Two people saying, "Oh yeah, absolutely. How much is it?" And now we have actually got to like do something about it. When we just changed the phrase to "Would you like to give it a try?" It changed the closing ratio insanely well. That's the other thing I'll point out that we do that other people don't. Another good nugget. No data, no decision. We track everything. So when we pitch, Kyle has a clicker. When they say yes, I have a tally sheet. So at the end of every con, we know how many people we pitched to versus how many purchased. And that is usually the signifier for us, good show or bad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, and so important for people to hear that you got to ask for the order, ask for the sale. And
yeah, directly.
Being in sales for a long time, sometimes I can take that for granted. That was my bread and butter still is in many ways. In my day job, I'm doing a lot of just generally sales. That's how I met Steven, actually, the person who connected us to you, Mark. And it was such an important lesson in my early days when I was, I think, 20 or something like that, selling my first ever set of knives, like long time ago. And you can kind of forget that people who maybe are brand new to sales feel awkward in that moment of asking for the money, asking, which is really what you're doing. You say, hey, would you like to give this a try? Is a clear yes or no distinction. Is, will you give me $20 for this? Like, essentially, right?
And it's Kyle's superpower. I've said it before and I'll lean into it again, that he has a decided lack of empathy when we're selling that I don't. Like, the problem is, like, there's been times where Kyle is not there and it's Matt and I selling, and we're terrible. Like, we can hold up the sign, we can give you the pitch, we can almost mimic Kyle word for word, cadence for cadence, but it gets to that, would you like to give it a try? And my brain will stop me from saying it because I'll read something in their face that goes, oh, they don't have money, or oh, they don't really like this. And I just forget to ask, or I get embarrassed and like, I'll let them tell me they want it. Kyle doesn't have any of that, which is great.
Yeah,
and it's been...
I've been accused of having lower empathy than Frank here, I think, sometimes because of
Who
that.
said that?
I'm just
I'm
holding the mirror up to nature here. This is but it's what works in sales. You do get out. It just becomes a numbers game, right? Like, of, you know, the way I always looked at it was, if I ask 10 people and 5 of them are saying yes, I'm still getting paid for those 5 no's. I just have to get through those no's to be able to get to the yeses. And so there is no harm, and was also taught there's no harm in asking. And I think that when we have something we believe in that maybe is our thing, but we maybe don't really believe in it, right? It's different when you're selling something that is, you know, the best knives in the world. Like I was selling, it's easy to say, oh, it's totally confident, everything's great, I might as well ask for it. But sometimes something we create, our own products, can be the hardest things for us to be wanting to ask for the sale on. And can you maybe speak to that a little bit about how, I mean, obviously you can hire a sociopath or whatever to sell your books if that's what you want to do. Not saying he's a sociopath, but like, could you speak to just even like believing in your product enough to be willing to ask for the order a bit?
Of course. And I mean, this is something that we learned at the very first Comic-Con we did. So when we got to that first Comic-Con with the March and we put it out on the table, and, you know, decidedly we are guys in our early 20s selling a creative nonfiction book about an immigration march at Comic-Con. And this is still when DC and Marvel had booths at these shows, and that you were in with the hardcore. This is 2008. So this is when X-Men and, you know, Batman were in theaters, but they were not the zeitgeist by any means. So you were still heading to the hardcore. We, the first day, sat on our hands. We put the book on the table and we prayed that someone would stop and look. And yeah, a couple people did. And we told them about it for far too long. And we forgot to ask for the sale. And, you know, sometimes someone would be really nice and ask you, and great. The next day we came in and our booth neighbor, the very nice gentleman, turned to us and he's like, would you guys take some advice? And we're like, we'll take all the advice, please. And he's a writer. He was selling his book. He had just optioned it to be a screenplay, so he was super excited. And he just told us the most important phrase I think we ever heard early in our career. What's the worst they're going to say? No? Right. And like that sort of opened the door where like Kyle heard those words and he immediately leveled up and he was like, oh, I get it. And like we had no problem at that point. That's when he started just getting into the aisle effectively and saying, sir, can I tell you about my comic? Miss, can I tell you about my comic? Because he knew the worst they could say is no. When it comes to the belief in our product, I would say, especially in comics, you get really lucky in that depending on who you're handing that book to, most people tend to look at it positively, even if it's not their style. You know, they say, oh, I'm not really into the books that look like this or whatever. It's been rare that we've been, I'd say, smacked on the chin by a review here and there. And it's happened. And you can't even disagree with what people say. It's like, yeah, it's subjective, right? We just know now, especially like with Samurnauts, people kind of know what they're getting when they buy it. And we've never heard an ill word for it. And when you say Mortal Kung Fu Monkey and someone like tells you literally shut up, how much is it?
Yeah, right.
You're like, okay, well, that's all the ego boost I'll ever need. So we'll take that.
I guess once you get, well, that's just it. Like once you get a sale or two, your confidence goes through the roof, right?
100%.
And then it becomes, it's like, sometimes you just have to really convince yourself before you get that first sale that it's worth what you're asking, and just get it, like go out and ask and try. Because if you just get those first few yeses, and then when you get the testimonials back from people who really liked it or come back after, like you see them at the next convention and they're like, I loved it, when are you coming out with more? Like, what does that do for you to be able to get excited about selling your product, right?
I mean, it's always there. And for us, I mean, it's also a matter of like, from a creator standpoint, like this is what drives us. Like we have a story that we're trying to tell, and we won't stop, like we say, until it's no longer fun, and it's never not been fun. So as much as we love people's feedback to it, I also know like I'm only one issue in out of 3 on Samurnauts to the Max. I have to finish the story. I have to get it out there. I would never want to be on the other side of that table. I've been that fan that doesn't get the complete story and you get pissed. I don't want that to happen. So yeah, it's a little bit of push and pull for sure.
I was wondering, one of the things we talk about is leveled up. Oh, actually, it's funny. We talk about it, and it's your leveled up problems, essentially. What is it when you've gotten to this stage in your career and, with the team, when you have gotten past the hurdle of how do I sell? What is the next hurdle that you have to deal with? For someone that's listening, for example, like, they understand how to sell, but what is the next thing that they may need to prepare for?
For us, it was always about the show data, because we knew like that's where we're selling. So now we have to figure out, to a degree, how are we keeping the doors open? Unshaven Comics doesn't need a lot to operate now, but we've had to fight to get that to that point. When we started out, minimal purchase orders for printing suck. And if you have to spend $3.85 for a book you're charging $5 for, and you try to do the math of how many books I need to sell to actually profit here, oh my God. Then you realize, well, this is a zero-sum game until I have enough content to feed a graphic novel. And only then do the scales flip, and now I can make actual profit. Now that I have actual profit, what determines a good show? How many books do I need to sell at this show for it to matter? And for us, I mean, that's pretty basic stuff. It's how much did this table cost me to be at this Comic-Con? Up until now, we've never factored our travel. It's just sort of there. Now that things have kind of changed for us financially, potentially, it could be something we care about and say, hey, like, can the company start paying us back for going to these things? Or can it cover itself? And then for us too, the next level up problem is we want to make more content than we have the ability time-wise to invest. Are we willing to take on other people to help us make these books? And to what degree do we allow them to be here? Because Unshaven Comics has always been 3. To add another name to that group, are they a part of us? Are they a name on a book? Or are they Unshaven Comics? And we're making those decisions kind of like as I'm talking to you guys right now. So that's been the next step.
I would like to dive into that a little bit. You talk about the data. You kind of talked a bit about balancing expenses and revenue. How did you learn that?
Baptism by fire. So,
okay.
I mean, like I said, my day job, I was a graphic designer turned marketer. So I knew about getting vendors. I knew about how to print and how to contact printers. It also helped that for a while, Matt worked at a print shop and was a printer. Nice. So we had some friends in the business, or at least understood specs. But when you have to make that first book, you got to learn as you're there. We also learned incredibly hard to learn lessons about friendship and networking and how that can bite you in the butt if you are not smart about this stuff. And we made bad decisions. We had friends literally attempt to stab us in the back. I'm sorry, not literally, figuratively, with some, hey guys, come over here, let me help you. And moments before we hit the trigger, something in my head popped on saying, hey, before you just write this guy a big old check, maybe you should find out if you're about to waste a bunch of money, and then find out you are, and go, oh crap, okay, pump the brakes, let's figure out the problem, let's work from there. So a lot of us, I mean, again, comics, we're very lucky in that this is a really simple business. We make X amount of books, we make X amount of profit. We know that we've done the math long enough to say 20 books a day at a con is a good day. So how do we reverse engineer that? When do we know that a show's bad and we're not going to go back to it? And for us specifically, it also goes around the fact that, We all have day jobs, we have kids, we have wives. So getting out to do these shows, we can only do so many now. Like when we didn't have kids, I looked at the data. We did 1 year, 17 shows. And I mean, that includes like 1-day shows that are local in town and stuff. But, we traveled for a lot of those. Now we do 4 to 6, 6 to 8, give or take. Just what's available, where we want to go. Luckily for us right now, we're kind of in that mode where it's like, hey, we haven't been to New York in a while, so we could go back. And luckily there's enough churn in the fan base that we can still sell Samronauts Curse of the Dreadnoughts to a whole new group of people that have never heard us or seen us or anything. So we're lucky in that case. But in all these cases, like, you learn either by doing it yourself and failing, or you get some trusted mentors, and we've had some of those that kind of lead you if you know how to ask the right questions.
Right. Well, what about this? Do you guys do anything that would be equivalent to like, I don't know, we call them like diamond level or Sparta level offers in our business. It would be like where I could pay a large sum of money to you, but I would get everything that you guys have published, for example, or maybe I get some like signed rarer version of your comic books. And do you have like diamond level for like super fans or people who really dig this kind of thing?
When we're at the show, if depending on the vibe, we really try to get away with selling the book. And then if they yes and that, if they're like, oh my god, yes, and after we tell them it's $20 and they got that out, and then they see there's other books on the rack, because we make it a point to not be like, oh, and if you think that's great, you need this book and you need that. We don't touch it. If you want the book, here's your $20, get lost and let's get the next person in. But if they stay, or if they're like, well, what's this other book and what's this one? Kyle will pitch that one quickly, and then we will tell them, like, by the way, there's no like discount, but if you get like the trade and another one of those books, we'll throw in a poster. Or if you get all 3 of them, we'll throw in 2 posters, because paper's cheap. So we'll do that. I don't think we've ever made it a point to do it. I think we're about to make a pivot because we've got a video game coming out. Watch me float that in the conversation. So next year, we know, like, if they buy more books, they get more incentives in the video game. So that we're trying to create that little like, hey, by the way, well, if you're really into this because there's a game, well, buy the book and the other 2 books, and now you get more stuff. So we're calling that a little bit of an experiment to see. I think it's, again, the Midwestern part of us that goes, I don't want to take every last dollar out of these people's pocket at the show, because there's so much cool stuff. So it's like, hey, if you like the Samronauts, I trust that if you like it enough, you'll come back to the website and buy another one. Mm-hmm. I also know well enough by the data they won't. So, like, let's get that trade off. Let's make them excited. And that's why we're publishing issues, is to get back to that trade. Because, again, that's where the economy of scale goes. Now, when I have 2 trades on my table, boy, howdy, it'll change. And we do have other books. So Kyle has his own dinner money trades that he's running through Unshaven Comics, which is great because it's allowed us to kind of diversify who we pitch to. Because that's the other thing that I know I didn't touch on. We pitch to everybody. Like, anyone who will stop, you will get to hear the pitch. And we'll pitch Samronauts to everybody. We don't care. But I will say there are certain types of people that come by the table that clearly will like Kyle's other books. Like, we can just make that judgment call based on any number of things that goes, they may like the Samronauts, but we know they're going to like this book. We've got ones called Blooms. And it's like, I know that if you have like half a buzz cut here and rainbow hair on top, you're going to love Blooms. I just know it. Yeah. And I'm more apt to have Kyle. Kyle will just pitch that, maybe because he knows that Matt and I won't say anything. So,
do you guys collect emails? I know you mentioned you have a newsletter. You've just started doing that, but the idea of like, pitching that to someone who doesn't buy makes less sense to me than like pitching to someone who does buy, right? And if they do buy, do you have a process to kind of say, hey, so you get discounts, or you get the notification about the upcoming releases? Would you want to sign up for? Is that something that's part of your pitch now? Or
we always tell people after they buy a book, or whether they buy or not, to please follow us on social media. We always ask them to do that if they do. I think for us, part of the fun is that we don't try too hard to own the customer because we are con based. I'd almost wish to forget everybody in a city so that every time we come back, it's fresh.
Right.
And that may change now as we get Samurnauts into other medium, and that will change how we think about it, but can't really talk on that until we've actually done it. And, you know, like I said, we have a lot of failing to do in the next couple of years to figure out how to correct that. So I'm looking forward to that part, especially.
So I think now is the time where we ask you about the video game.
Are we doing a video game? Oh, cool.
Yeah, you kind of raised that in the conversation very casually.
Yeah, that's exactly.
What's the video? Yeah. What's the video game focus on?
So we are going to be doing a game on the Roblox platform. It is a tycoon style combat game. So if you're into Roblox, that will make sense to you. I don't, but I'm learning.
I don't either. So can you please explain it to me like I don't know?
Absolutely. So and my 12-year-old's super into Roblox, so I've been schooled. Now, if you don't know, I'll help you out. Roblox is a platform where there are millions of games that you can play for free. You just sign. It's mostly a mobile thing. I didn't know that because my kids play it on Xbox. So you can do it on Xbox. You can do it on your PC. You can do it on your phone or tablet. So inside Roblox will be a Samurnauts game. The point of that game is you choose your favorite Samurnaut or Al, the immortal Kung Fu Monkey, and you train them inside your own little personal dojo. You level up their strength and how much Samur Force they have, and you can spend the Samur Force on new moves, new costumes, and other upgrades to your character. And then at all times, there's a center square that is populated by villains. You can go out and fight the villains, and every now and again, a giant villain will come down, and all Samurnauts in the arena, because you can have up to 6, can all attack that villain and survive. And the whole point is survive, keep leveling up, get all the cool stuff, and then I'm sure have your parents yell at you and come to dinner. And then do it all over the next day by gaining up a new character. Because like I said, there's, to start with, 6 playable characters, but we're going to drop new skins and new special moves and new stuff as we go. So hopefully, like, you'll start playing as your favorite Samurnaut from the 2500s, but you could come back in a couple of weeks and play as one of the steampunk Samurnauts, or play as 1980s double polo Al. So like, all those. Yeah.
I noticed on your website, you have the different eras of
Yes.
Samurnauts, and I was wondering, because we hadn't really talked about that, so that explains that element to me. And what I also really like about this is you're thinking long term. You're thinking about what other moves, costumes, the different eras. It's not just I made a game, I'm done, because this is a great way to generate not only buzz, but also new viewers to your books.
I mean, that is, it's twofold. So to double back on like maybe how we did this, and I'll shorten this down as best I can. This year we took a huge gamble, legit. We had stumbled over a licensing expo that's in Las Vegas every year, and by happenstance of me
Hey Nerdpreneurs, want to hear the end of that story from Marc? Well, you can get it by going to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and joining the
Awesome Nerdpreneur Board.
Board members get access to full episodes from the 30-plus interviews that we've already done and all of our Talking Nerdy episodes, plus some other cool bonuses exclusive just for board members. We talked to Marc for almost another hour, and he had so much to talk about in terms of how to really maximize events, how they landed this video game deal, and all sorts of other great strategies for people aspiring to be professional comic book artists. I think you'll really dig it, so go to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and join the awesome Nerdpreneur board today. Now let's get back to the episode.
Well, let's go ahead. Chris, I can see the look in your eyes. You're ready to move to the random rolls.
Yes,
I
yes.
said that funny.
I'm
Random
hearing the
rolls.
wind on our side, and it's
Yes.
very, very strong. So I am actually worried we're going to lose power.
I've been
imminently.
freaking out this entire interview. It's been loud.
So yeah, if we can move on to it's hitting our zone right now. If we can move on to random rolls, I think that'll be great.
So these, you're going to roll the D100 a few times. We're going to ask you a couple questions based on the numbers. These are less serious, less about business, more fun, more about hobbies.
Sweet. Okay. That would be 64.
64. Do you play Dungeons and Dragons, and do you have a favorite class that you play?
I have played it before in like single night kind of campaigny things, and I was told to never do it again. I took it too seriously in the character creation because I didn't know Dungeons and Dragons, but I know role playing. I purposefully chose a barbarian, and I purposefully made his intelligence as low as possible, and I very purposefully swung my axe at anything the DM mentioned.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So they're like, you're doing this right, but leave.
You're doing this right, but this is making my job difficult.
Right. I just remember, like, I kept telling him I was like gonna bash down a door. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, my character is dumb as rocks. He doesn't like that door. You said it was glowing. He don't like glows. That's Tell me I'm wrong. They're like, nope, just leave.
Go ahead and roll again.
You got it. That would be 56.
If you were to be a wizard or someone who uses magic, what animal would you want as a familiar?
Man, that is a good question. Not Mudang.
No.
You know, honestly, I think I would want a Sphinx cat.
Ooh, the hairless cats, right?
Yeah, the one that looks like a chicken breast and a scalp. Yes,
a plucked chicken.
Never looks happy. Just
I want those who stand across from me from the field to be thoroughly confused at the weird mummy kitten that's just like sitting on my shoulder with a hoodie. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Should we do rapid fire?
Yeah, let's move on into rapid fire. So this is the final stage, the boss fight. These are quick and silly questions that you may or may not get correct. And the first one is Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek.
Thank you.
That is correct, I'd say.
Yep.
Who's the best Spider-Man actor?
Tom Holland.
All right, solid. That's a solid answer. We'll give that to you.
There's been a lot of Tobey Maguires on this show. I don't understand why, but Chris likes it.
Very, very few Andrew Garfields, which is what I really want to point out.
I mean, like, look, he really is a close second, and I would say that it wasn't his fault. It was the quality of movie.
No. Yes. I agree. I think the actors in that one are great. I mean, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin is amazing. Like, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, this one we don't actually get to ask very often. Fuck, marry, kill Iron Man, Thor, Captain America.
Oh, mean. Okay, well, I'm gonna tough.
Go for it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna marry Iron Man because I want to be like set for life. And I mean, cool. I'm gonna kill Thor because I feel like he's gonna come back elsewhere anyway. And is it okay for me to gift my fucking of Captain America to my wife because she really loves Captain America?
That's America's ass.
So I would let that happen. Yes.
I think, put it this way, I don't think my marriage could really hold up if I didn't allow her to do that. So
the jealousy on a whole new level.
Yeah, she herself could Hulk out and just that would be the end of me. So no.
All right. So in the superhero vein, what superpower would you want?
Green Lantern ring.
Yes.
Too easy on that one.
Which of the other Lantern, I believe they're called Lantern Corps, would you be a member of?
Oh, nil. Screw the other Lantern Corps.
Which color is that? I forget.
None. I don't like any of the other ones. If I had to choose, I would choose the greed one because I could just be by myself. Screw it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Jeff Johns' whole deification of the Green Lantern universe, bad decision.
Really? You think so?
Ultimately, hindsight is 2020. In the thick of it, absolutely loved it, bought all of it, thought it was insanely great. Then it became immediately too convoluted.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yes.
Like, can you tell me who's in what core anymore?
No, yeah, and then
also,
Batman getting picked up at one point.
Also, I'm fairly sure that Hal Jordan got to be one of everything, which to me should just be really problematic. And then Kyle was the White Lantern.
He was the Messiah. Yeah.
Like I'm all for empowering Kyle, not that way. You know,
it was a bit much.
It was. Sorry, I rapid fired that one.
That's all right.
No, that was good.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't have one, so whatever they have loaded up from the Bare Naked Ladies.
Good answer. If I Had $1 million is a great karaoke song.
It's solid, but I would be that a-hole that would look for the deep cut that no one knows.
You can be like, you can be my Yoko Ono.
You guys don't want to hear Box Set? Come on.
Yoda or Obi-Wan?
Obi-Wan.
3 favorite pizza toppings.
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. Ground beef, ham, and pineapple.
Predator or Aliens?
Predator. Cooler weapons.
You know, Mark, this has been so great, and I appreciate you spending the time to share all of your wisdom and inner working strategy and knowledge on really building a comic book company from the ground up. And I think there are people out there that will really find some value in this. We always like to finish our episodes by asking our nerdpreneurs that come on the show, what advice would you give to aspiring nerdpreneurs? And is this something that they should go for if they're thinking about going into and starting their own nerdy business, whether it be comic books or any other type of business?
Well, first of all, absolutely do it. I would say learn from me. Think of it first as a permanent side hustle. If you have the passion and desire to go at it for something greater than that, then by all means go all in. But I think it's okay to dip your toe into the water intelligently. So do your research for sure. Commit to the grind. Get yourself to a point where you're actually satisfied for sure with your end product. But do so in a manner that allows you to test the waters. So always be testing. No data, no decision, right? So go out there, see what the audience, see how receptive they are to you, and learn the soft skills necessary to thrive in your business. So whether that's negotiation, salesmanship, vendor relations, whatever those things might be, take the time to master them, network your ass off, find the people that are willing to give you that information and tap them dry, and don't be afraid to do it.
Love that. Well, Nerdpreneurs, listeners, thank you for listening. And as always,
keep it nerdy.
So where can people go and get some comic books from you or support what you guys are doing?
You can always come out and see us at a show if we're coming to your neighborhood. If you're in New Orleans and you're hanging around in January, we'll see you. But you can always check us out at unshavencomics.com. You can also go to Facebook or Instagram. We're also Unshaven Comics there. Just search for us. We're going to be on TikTok eventually. And if you play Roblox in the next month, look for the Samronauts game there. But I'd say if you want to know when the game's coming out, just go to unshavencomics.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get one from me telling you when it's actually out. Or stop me on the street. I'm not really hard to find. I'm like one of the most famous people in Homewood. So find the beer. I'm always dropping my kids off somewhere, so just shake me down.
Hey, board members, did you know that Nerdpreneur is in the top 5% of all podcasts in the world right now? and that's mainly because of you guys. So I gotta say a big, huge, heartfelt thank you to our board members who continue to make this possible and continue to support us. If you love what you're hearing,